who are attending today. And my name is Yash Dhingra. I am a scientist B working in Certin for the past a little more than 3 years now. And I am a master's in technology in computer science and engineering from Triple IT Delhi. And before that, I have worked in corporates as well. I've worked in Microsoft and I worked in Centio, which is a fintech corporation. After that, I joined Certain and I've been here in cybersecurity domain ever since. So today we are going to talk about introduction to mobile security. So this is going to be a very basic presentation about the most basic things that we should know about mobile security, because all of us carry mobile devices, and the basic best practices that we can all follow as mobile device users so that we can stay safe. So before we talk about anything technical and any theory, let's just go through some current trends and what all is happening nowadays in the mobile security domain. So I'm going to very briefly talk about certain some of these trends, and I'm pretty sure some of you, or maybe even all of you, would have heard about all these events and all these cybersecurity incidents that have taken place in the past few months. So I'm pretty sure all of you are using the Arogya Setu application, and as soon as the government started publicizing this application, that this application needs to be installed for COVID-19 contact tracing, there were fake clones of this particular application available everywhere, and they were being spread through SMSs and through WhatsApp messages, and these were basically targeted more towards the defense personnel and towards people who are employed in the government. So this was all these fake applications were meant for spying and for taking data from the user's mobile device. So whenever the person would install this particular application, it will take all the extensive permissions from the user, and then it will start spying. So it can start recording you, it can start taking away your SMSs, it can do a lot of other malicious stuff. Then I'm pretty sure all of you have heard about this incident about the government banning certain mobile applications. So 59 applications were initially banned by the government in June, and then 47 clones of these applications were banned, I think, in July, and then again 118 applications in September, and then another set of 48 applications were banned, I think, in December. So we've banned a lot of applications, and the main reason for banning these applications was that they were collecting a lot of user data, and then they were actually taking all this data of Indian users to countries which are actually hostile to India, and which obviously the government doesn't want, and which we don't want. We want the data should ideally stay in India. Otherwise, even if it is going outside, then it should only go out to countries which are friendly with us and not hostile to us. Then I think we talked about this particular incident in my last presentation about TikTok. So TikTok was one of the applications which was banned because it was also collecting a lot of data, and it was taking it outside India and storing it on servers in hostile countries. But TikTok has been flagged by various countries at various different times for different reasons. And this is one of them, which we already discussed, that it was taking MAC addresses and basically using them for profiling the users, which is actually not allowed by Google itself. So before moving on to anything else, I think we've mentioned this particular term called permissions during discussing all these current trends and incidents. So let's talk about the permissions first. And both iOS and Android have a permission model. Both of them have different set of permissions which the user needs to grant to the application. So you might have seen this screen when you try to install any application on your device. It will tell you a list of all the permissions that the application needs to work. And when you click on the accept button, only then it is possible for you to install that application from the Google Play Store on your device. So these permissions are basically a set of features which the application needs on the mobile device, and only when you allow that particular application to use all these features will it be able to work. So there has been a little bit of a difference. I have put this screen initially. This is from I think Android 5 or 6 or maybe. And initially, all the permissions that the application needs used to be shown to the user on the screen itself when the user was installing the application. So you can see that even SMS and then personal information, network communication, everything is listed here, and the user needs to accept all these permissions at the time of installing the application. But now this model has changed, at least on Android, and obviously iOS is also there. It is also following the same thing. So now permissions which are which basically use any feature that has any personal data of the user. So that permission is not asked at the time of installation. It is asked at the time of at the runtime. While you're using the application, it will ask you. So we are going to look at these different type of permissions now. So there are certain permissions which are called normal permissions. So these permissions are basically those features where any of your personal data is not present. For example, accessing the Wi-Fi or accessing your 4G network. All these permissions basically they are they don't have any of your personal data. So all these permissions are called normal permissions. And whenever you try to install a particular application, all these permissions will be listed. And when you give these permissions, or when you allow all these permissions to the application can then only work after you have given these permissions. So the catch about these permissions is that they cannot be revoked. So if you've installed an application and you've allowed all these permissions, then they cannot be revoked, which means you cannot take them back from the application. And that the reason behind this is that because there is no risk of data loss as such from these permissions. So uh, Google has not given the option of revoking these permissions. Then there are certain permissions which are called signature permissions. So signature permissions are those permissions which are proprietary to a particular application. So all the other permissions that we are going to talk about in this section are basically permissions which are defined by Google, and which the Android OS itself handles. But there are certain permissions which an application developer can also define for his particular application. So if there is one company which is hosting two applications, and one of those applications needs to access data on the other application, in such cases, this particular signature permission is required. So as an example, you can take the Facebook and the Instagram applications. Both of them are owned by Facebook, and you can also log into your Instagram account by using your Facebook account. So if you want to log into your Facebook account and you want to use, I'm sorry, if you want to log into your Instagram account and you want to use your Facebook credentials, in that case, the Instagram application will need to access some data on the Facebook application on your device. So in such case, the Facebook application will have some signature permission which will allow the Instagram application to actually use that data. So this is only for proprietary, and this is only for the same developer. If he wants to if he wants to share some data in between his two applications, only then this is required. Then the next set of permissions is called dangerous permissions. So all those features on your mobile device which have your personal data, for example, the mobile device storage, your contacts, your location, your SMSs, your call logs, all these are personal data, and they can be misused. So all these features, whenever an application wants to use them, all these permissions are called dangerous permissions. And the catch about these is that they can be revoked. So if you go inside your settings and if you look at all the applications that you have installed, then you will see that there is a page called permissions page, and you can actually go inside each application and check the permissions page, and you'll see what all permissions you have already granted. So you can actually take back these dangerous permissions as well. And the other thing about this is that they need to be explicitly granted to the application at runtime. So you might have noticed that when you install any application and you open it, you will see that it is going to ask you for these permissions explicitly. For example, if you run the camera feature, then it is going to ask you for permission to access the camera. If you try to read the SMSs, it is going to ask you for permission to read the SMSs. So all these permissions you have to grant explicitly, and you can also take back. Then there are certain permissions which are called special permissions, and these permissions basically are even more sensitive than the dangerous permissions, because they are basically giving an access to the application to make certain changes in the settings as well, or in the settings of the device. So one of these permissions is called write settings. So if you grant this permission to the application, basically the application will be able to change the settings of your mobile device as well, which can be even more risky because if the application can change settings, then it can do even more damage. So all these permissions basically again are required at runtime, and when the application wants to access certain features, it will give you a prompt that it needs this particular permission, and you can actually go inside the settings and grant this permission to them. So if you've ever used Android launcher applications, you would have seen that all these launcher applications require this particular permissions, because you're basically changing the home screen of your device, and your that particular launcher will also need to write certain changes, like for example changing the wallpaper, turning on and off the Wi-Fi and other settings. So it will always take this particular permission from you. Then certain best practices regarding permissions. You should always check the permissions of the application before you're installing the application. So nowadays, this is not such an important deal, because when you're installing the application, it is only going to take your internet and basic permissions only, which we call normal permissions. But still, you should, before installing the applications, you should just go through all the permissions that it is taking. Then if the app is asking for more permissions while you're trying to use the application, you should always deny that permission unless it is absolutely necessary for the functioning of the application. For example, in certain cases, now if you've used Zomato or Swiggy or any of these food ordering applications, or maybe Book My Show application, then you would have seen that when you're trying to sign into the account, they will ask you for permission to read your SMSs. That is basically to give you an experience of a seamless sign in. And when you punch in your login ID and password, it will automatically read your OTP from your SMSs, and it will automatically sign in. So that particular permission of reading the SMSs is not necessary for the functioning of any of these applications. And in such cases, you should always deny the SMS permission. Instead, you should just pull down your notifications, read the OTP, and then punch in it manually. Or that is always the best practice. Because once you have given this particular SMS permission to the application, it will always have it unless you go inside the settings and disable it. And the application will always be able to read all your OTPs and all your other SMSs as well. So you never know if any application has any malicious intent or not. So it's always best to stay safe and avoid giving your SMS permission to any of these applications. Then there are certain red flags. For example, if a web browser is randomly seeking permission to access your camera, this is basically a red flag, because a web browser should ideally not be reading your camera unless you're going to some chatting website or to some video call website. only then it should be asking for that permission when you are trying to use that feature. But if a web browser is asking for that particular permission to access your camera or your microphone or any other feature, this is basically a red flag. A web browser should just be a web browser. It should just be accessing the internet. And at maximum, it should ask for permission to access your storage, because if you want to download any files, it will ask you for permission to access your storage as well. Then you should check permissions which you have already granted to applications that are installed on your device. Just go to the settings page and then check all the applications and what all permissions you have already granted. If you think any permission is there which you have given to an application which should not ideally be required, then you can just revoke that permission. So these are certain other things which we should keep in mind. Like we should always keep our operating system updated. We should keep our applications updated. You will see that on Android and iOS, you keep receiving updates of your application. You also keep receiving updates from Google and from Apple for updating the operating system. It's always advised to buy phones of manufacturers. I'm talking about Android. You should always buy phones from manufacturers who are more regular in pushing operating system updates. So there is a lot of fragmentation on the Android side, and most of the manufacturers don't follow the timeline required for pushing security updates on the devices. So try to buy phones from manufacturers who are more regular and who push updates for a longer time. Because if you're buying a phone, you're definitely going to be using it for at least 2 years. So you should make sure that whatever manufacturer you're getting the phone from should be pushing security updates for at least 2 years. And most of you would be using phones from Chinese manufacturers, but unfortunately, almost all of these manufacturers are not very regular, and in most cases, they will push security updates for 6 months or maybe 1 year, but they won't support the device after that, which is a very sad thing, because you're making all your transactions on your mobile device. You're having all your private communications, your chat, and your messages and call logs, everything on your device. If the device itself is not updated, then there can be a lot of attacks which can be executed, and you may suffer a data loss. So that's a best practice. Whenever you change your mobile device, just go for better manufacturers next time. And if you have any unused applications on your device which you've not used for several weeks or several months, just uninstall those applications. And there are several of such applications called memory cleaners and battery optimizers on the Google Play Store. And all these applications are basically, they do nothing. They take all of your device's permissions, and in turn they do more harm than they do any good. So you should always avoid all these over smart applications. Instead, just keep the minimum set of applications on your device and uninstall all the unused ones, and I think you'll be mostly safe. There are some more best practices. So another page worth of best practices. And if you're using a mobile device and you think that you don't need an antivirus, that is actually not the right thing. You always need an antivirus. Just keep a good antivirus on your device. There are several free antiviruses available from good companies on the Google Play Store. You can simply go and install them. And you should not install applications from untrusted sources. So if you have ever tried to install an APK file which you have downloaded from the internet, you would have seen that there is a permission specifically to allow installation of APK files from untrusted sources. So this is never recommended. You should never download APK files from the internet and install it on your device, because this can always be risky. The APK file can actually have some malicious code which will start snooping on your data, and which will start sending your data across to the attackers. So this is never recommended. And you should not click on links that you have received in SMSs from unverified sources. If you receive any such SMS, just discard it. And we are going to take certain case studies where we are going to look at similar cases where SMSs were used for phishing people. And you should always check which all applications have permissions to access the location and contacts specifically, because these things are very private. And I think even call logs and SMSs, just go inside your settings and check for all the applications which have these permissions. And unless it is absolutely required by the application, for example, the location permission would be required by the Maps application, so you cannot revoke that. But otherwise, if any other application is having that location permission permanently, then you should disable it. So last point here, you can see that I have striked out Truecaller, UC Browser, and Cam Scanner. And all these applications have certain malicious behavior. Cam Scanner and UC Browser were actually banned by the government, I think, in the first wave itself in June, mainly because they were collecting a lot of user data and then they were taking it to hostile countries. So that was the main reason. UC Browser, I think, came pre-installed with a lot of Chinese devices. And the thing about this thing was that it was really over smart in its tactics. It used to take the permissions for your camera, your microphone, your SMSs, your storage, your call logs, basically everything that you do on your device. It used to take all those permissions and then basically work. So this is an application by a Chinese developer, and they try to take a lot of data from the users. So it's always good to keep all these applications away from your device. And then Truecaller also, I think almost 100% of you would be having this application on your device. So this was not banned because it is not collecting data and then sending it across to hostile countries. But Truecaller basically has permissions to access your location, your SMSs, your call logs, your contacts. So you can just go inside the settings page and you'll see that it has already taken all these permissions. And the risk here is that even if we assume that Truecaller is not a malicious company, and Truecaller is a good company which is not going to share your data with third parties, there is always a risk that if Truecaller suffers a data breach, in that case, all your call logs, SMSs, and contacts, location history, everything is basically going out publicly, and it will be sold to some attacker somewhere, which can obviously be used against you at any given point of time. So there have been several such cases. This was from 2019. Data leaked for 300 million Truecaller users. Truecaller basically denied this breach. And this is a snapshot of the kind of data that was available. And you can see in this particular thing, the highlighted text, it actually has links to Truecaller images, but Truecaller actually denied this particular data belongs to them, and they said that this is data from somewhere else. So you can see names of several Indian users, and there were a lot of people who were there in this particular who were compromised in this particular attack. And then again, last year, 2020, May 27, this news item was published. 4.75 crore Indian Truecaller data on sale for 75,000 rupees. So all these, again, this particular news was also denied by Truecaller, and they said that there have been no data loss from their side. So obviously, if a company keeps denying all this, doesn't mean that data breaches cannot happen. Even if these two data breaches were not from Truecaller, no company is 100% safe, and it can always suffer another attack anytime in the future. So we are done with this section. Now we need to take up the case studies. Before that, we'll just go through some questions. I was seeing there were a lot of questions which were coming in the chat section. So there's a question from Mr. Vipin Kumar. Most of the applications always ask for permissions for audio and video, etc. Contacts, is it safe? So if the application requires that permission, for example, if you're using a camera application, if you're using a gallery application, it may ask for all these permissions. If basically you're installing an application from a scrupulous or a good developer, which has good reviews on the Google Play Store or App Store, then in most cases you would be safe. But there is no 100% safety ever. If you're giving all this data to anybody and they suffer a data breach, in that case your data can be compromised. So that is why I said that if it is absolutely required for the functioning of the application, only then you should give access to any particular application. In case you think that it is asking for all this data but it is not required by the application, so in that case I would recommend not to use that application at all. Just use the website if it is possible, but don't use the application as such. Then there is another question: how can we come to know about the duration of the manufacturer is giving the security updates? So you can actually Google all this. Just whatever mobile device you are planning to buy. In most cases, there would be a predecessor to that particular mobile device. So, for example, you're using Redmi M1 or any or such device. So, if you're buying the M2 phone, then just check for how long did Redmi issue security updates for the M1 version of the device. You can actually Google that and you can find that out. And it's a personal recommendation. All these companies, Xiaomi, Redmi, and all the Chinese manufacturers, they are not good with pushing security updates. In fact, Samsung used to be very poor with this for a long time. Only recently they have actually ramped up their infrastructure to an extent that they can push security updates. But I would recommend personally to go for devices which are directly from the company who is pushing the updates. So that is Apple and Google directly. If that is not possible, then go for companies which are better in doing this. And you can always just Google it and you will be able to find out. So there is another question: which antivirus for mobile? So I cannot actually recommend any particular antivirus for the mobile devices. But you can go to Google Play Store, just search for antiviruses. You'll see a lot of antiviruses are there. So Kaspersky, Bitdefender, Quick Heal, and there are other manufacturers as well. You can just search and you'll be able to find out a lot of antiviruses, and you can compare their features and you can install them. And this is mostly required if you're doing a lot of stuff on your mobile device. If you're using only a basic set of applications from the Google Play Store and you're not clicking on any links that you receive in your SMSs, you're not clicking on any links inside your emails, then in such cases, if you're using only your phone for basic purposes like for SMSing, for your WhatsApp and for your calls, in that case, you can actually skip the antivirus. But if you're installing a lot of applications, if you're doing a lot of stuff on your mobile device, in that case, it is always recommended to have an antivirus on your device. Then Arogya Setu applications ask for your location permission. Shall we disable that? So, sir, actually, I think it will not work without the location and the Bluetooth permission. That is, it is required for the basic functionality. And since it is developed by the government, you can actually trust it to an extent that it is not going to be misused. Otherwise it will not simply not work, because it requires a location permission to find out where all you have gone and what all people you have come in contact with for tracing your contacts. So otherwise it will not work, and you can actually trust it to that extent, I guess. And any safe alternative to Truecaller? So there is one safe alternative to Truecaller, and that is the Google Phone Dialer application. If you go on to Google Play Store, you can actually search for the Google Dialer, and you will find out an application called, I'll just tell you the name. It's called Phone by Google. Just search for that on Google Play Store and you can install that application on your device. So that basically will not give you the names of any anonymous callers on you whenever you receive a call. But if you're receiving calls from any spammers, then it will give you an alert that this is a possible spammer. You can take a decision whether you want to take that call or not. Otherwise, there is no safe alternative to Truecaller, because any company which is harvesting that amount of data can always suffer a data breach, and then you can actually lose your data in the process. Uh, so it is said that iOS permits more granular control over grant of permissions, and is it true that Apple phones are presumed to be secure and used by leaders worldwide? So definitely, if the manufacturer of the device is also pushing the security updates and giving you the software, in that case, it is always a more closed system, and it is a little more difficult to actually hack such devices, or to go inside and get the data easily. Also, iOS has a lot more security practices built into the application monitoring software that they have. So whenever a developer is actually pushing the application for publishing on the App Store, there are a lot more security checks, or I think in Apple, than there are in Google. And in fact, Google used to be very lax with that for a long time, and maybe past 1 or 2 years they've ramped up, and now there are a lot of security checks on Google side as well. So it's not really easy to push malware on Google Play Store is also now. But earlier that used to be possible, but iOS was always more secure in that sense. Um, there is another reason for that. Google Play Store, anybody can actually develop an application and publish it for free, whereas you need a license and you need to pay for publishing applications on the iOS. So in that case, there are a lot of simple developers who want to hack into devices, but they don't want to make any payment. So automatically they are discouraged from developing applications for the iOS, because you also need a MacBook for that. So there are a lot of restrictions on the iOS side which prevent hackers from going there. Also, when you talk about India, more than 90% or 95% of the devices sold in India, I think, are Android devices. So if only 2 or 3% or maybe 5% of the users are using iOS devices, in that case, your audience and your basically your number of victims is also less. So in that sense, Apple, yes, is definitely more secure. When someone is asked if AVG is a good antivirus, yes, definitely that is also a renowned antivirus. You can check their features and you can install it. Is iOS better than Android in terms of security? Someone else has also asked. I think I've already answered that. Can we uninstall inbuilt browsers from Redmi phones? So I think you cannot install certain applications from these Chinese devices. But the thing is that you can actually go and disable them. There are certain applications which can actually be disabled, and there are certain applications which you cannot even disable. So in that case, if you can just go inside the permissions page, if you can just check if you can revoke the permissions from the application. But if you see that there are a lot of applications which are coming pre-installed with the device, and you don't even know for what it is working, in that case, it is always better to shift to some other manufacturer. So, for example, Huawei mobile phones were actually flagged because there was one default application which was coming installed with them, and it was suspected that that particular application was actually used for spying on the users. So all these manufacturers, personally, I never trust all these Chinese manufacturers, and I always stay away from them. And that will be my recommendation to all the participants as well. Then government could use SIM location to get location in Arogya Setu. So SIM location, I think that authority itself is not given to all the organizations. So Arogya Setu is being maintained by I think Ministry of Electronics and some other agencies of the government. So that particular permission to actually access the mobile tower location is not allowed. It is only allowed to I think law enforcement agencies, to police and to other law enforcement agencies. So you cannot actually give that permission to anybody, because there is always a chance of that being misused. Instead, the location is of the user is being taken, I think, and they are using a lot of encryption techniques to actually to so that that particular data cannot be misused. Then now WhatsApp has made it compulsory to share data with Facebook. Is there any method to avoid this? So yeah, yes, I think I saw that particular notification from WhatsApp yesterday itself, but I don't think there is any way to avoid it. If you don't want to share your data with Facebook, in that case, you'll have to actually stop using WhatsApp. I think from April they've set the deadline, so I don't remember, but I think you'll have to stop using WhatsApp if you don't want to share your WhatsApp data with Facebook. Otherwise, you can simply assume that Facebook already has that data, because Facebook is the owner of WhatsApp, and even if they don't declare it, there would be some kind of collaboration between them. Can we safely use government apps securely on Android, such as email app of NIC? So if the developer is basically from the government, like just check if that particular application has been advertised on the government's website. And if you go onto the government website and if you click on the link which takes you to the Google Play Store, only then you can be sure that actually that particular application is belonging to or is actually developed by the government. Otherwise, there are always a lot of clones for all these government applications. If you search for NIC mail, there will be several such clones of this particular application. And you can always use this, but just make sure you go to the website first and figure out the link to that, and only then you install it. So that was quite a bit of questions. I'm happy that most of you are listening. It's early morning, but all of you are attentive, and all of you are asking good questions. So Naresh ji, am I audible? Just check so that I don't lose connectivity.
Sure.
Okay, okay. So Naresh ji, I'm just moving on to the next section. We are going to talk about case studies now. This is, I think, even more interesting part, because you'll be able to see how actually certain attacks have been carried out using mobile devices. And it's possible that some of you might have been victims of this as well. So if that is the case, you can actually share your experience with us if something similar has happened. And we'll talk about that after we discuss these case studies. So the first case study is basically related to the income tax department, and it started with a smishing campaign. So in my previous presentation, we talked about phishing, and if phishing is being carried out using SMSs, in that case, it is called smishing. So again, a colloquial term, which is like, if you search for it, you can actually find out interesting articles about it. And so this particular incident, it started with these fraudulent SMSs, and the user will receive such an SMS from random SMS codes. So what you see on the top, VK Notify and AD-Tele OS. So this is called SMS short codes, and these are basically given to bulk SMS providers. And you can actually go and book any of these bulk SMS providers, and they will provide you with an SMS short code, and then you can use that to send SMSs in bulk. So these attackers were using several of these short codes, and in one particular case, they were actually able to use the short code which is used by the genuine income tax department. So the income tax department uses ITREFL. That is one of their short codes. They have others as well, but that is one of the shortcodes which is used by the income tax department, and the attackers were somehow able to use that same SMS shortcode to send an SMS. And we actually had a particular case. One of my colleagues had actually received this fraudulent SMS from the attacker. So basically, it had a link inside it. So we talked about all this Bitly and URL shorteners in my previous presentations. And there was this particular link, and the SMS would say that there is certain amount of income tax which you need to claim back, and there is a refund which the income tax department has to give back to you, and you need to click on that particular link, and you need to punch in all your details for that. So when you click on this particular link, you will be taken through this kind of a website. So this is only one example. There were several such websites. There were hundreds of such fake websites which the attacker had created. And we talked about this last time also very briefly. But if you look at this page, you will see there is a drop down menu for selecting your bank. So when you click on that select button, you will see Citibank, you'll see State Bank of India, you'll see ICICI, you'll see Axis Bank. So several banks would be listed. And when you click on that proceed button, you will be taken to your respective bank's phishing page. So if you look at the URL bar, I'm just going to zoom in a little bit. If you see, it's actually not the Citibank's website. It is housed on some random IP address, and there are several folders under which this has been housed. So basically, when you enter your login ID and password, your net banking credentials of Citibank will actually be compromised to the attacker. So you can see they have built this page which looks exactly like Citibank's page, except if you see, they have written welcome to Citi online income tax refund. So the attackers are pretty smart. They've actually created the exact replica. And on the next page, once you click on the proceed button, your login ID and password for Citibank will actually be compromised, and the attacker will get those details. Then after that, on the next page, it will ask you for your PAN card number, your name, your address, your marital status, your Aadhaar number, your date of birth, your email address, your PAN card number, your debit card number, credit card number, your ATM pin, basically everything, basically all your confidential details it is going to ask you. And when you click on that submit button, it is going to take all that information to the attacker, and it is going to show you this page. So it will say that your income tax refund application is incomplete, and you need to verify your mobile device before your refund can be processed. So in order to verify your mobile device, you need to download a particular application or an APK file, and when you download this APK file and install it, only then your refund will be processed. So if you can just read it here, you'll see that they are also giving you the instructions for actually installing this particular app on your device. So for most layman users, for most common users, that permission to install applications from unknown sources is actually disabled. So they are also giving you the instructions, go to settings, and then go to security or lock screen, and then they will tell you that you need to click on OK and allow that particular permission. Only then you will be able to install this particular application. So if you follow all these steps, if you download this particular APK, then we are going to see what that APK is basically doing. So we were actually able to find out this particular APK and other resources from by taking a website dump of one of these fraudulent websites, and we found that APK file over there, and then we were able to do some analysis, static analysis on that. So these are some of the things that we noticed, that it is basically an application to steal your OTP messages. So the attacker has already taken all your other details, your net banking details, your credit card, debit card details. All he or she needs now is to access your OTPs. And for that, they need access to your SMSs on your mobile device. So this particular application was basically snooping OTPs, and they read all your SMSs, and it is going to forward all your SMSs to the attacker's phone number, which was embedded inside the application, and it is going to delete all those SMSs from your device. So you won't even get to know when and what messages have been received on your device, and all your messages will actually be taken to the attacker. So these are the screenshots of that particular application. So we installed it on one of our sandboxes and emulators, and then we were able to see what that application is doing. So you can just take a look at all this. The first screenshot, you'll see that it is showing that particular application. The name of the application is e_mobile, and it has the logo of the income tax department. When you open that application, you'll see that it is going to ask you for several permissions. First of all, it is going to ask you for your contacts permission. It is going to ask you for your call logs, and it is going to ask you for your SMS permissions. After that, it is going to ask you for permission to become the default SMS application on your device. So only once you grant this permission, it is basically going to start its main functioning. It is going to start reading your SMSs, and it is going to start forwarding your SMSs to the attacker. So we'll just look at a small snippet of code from this particular app. So you'll see there are all these permissions are actually listed: get SMS, read phone state, get accounts. So it is going to do all that. It is going to ask you for permissions, and then you'll see that there, on this particular snippet of code, there are these four different mobile numbers listed. I've actually blacked out the phone numbers, but you can see that they are Indian phone numbers because they start with +91. And there were four different phone numbers for different kinds of SMSs. We are not sure how they were segregating and what different how they were segregating the different SMSs, but all these numbers were being used to forward different kinds of SMSs. Then there is another case study, and this is fairly recent. This happened, I think, beginning of December, or maybe November. And there were these phishing SMSs, and you'll see that again this Cutly and Bitly and all these URL shorteners are being used over here as well. So when you click on this particular URL, so I forgot to mention, they were in this case they were not SMSs, they were actually WhatsApp messages which were being sent across to a large number of users. So when you click on that link, you'll be taken to this website, and it will say Oppo Rupee application favorite loans, and then it will say get it on Google Play Store. So that actually is not a link to the Google Play Store. That is actually when you click on that link, it will download a malware on your device again, and the malware actually is going to say that it is going to offer you a loan, but that's not the case. It is, I think they were snooping, and we're going to look at that. So there were several different applications which were listed on this page. There was Oppo Rupee, there was Tick Cash, and there were Vivo Rupee, something like that. So some famous brand names of Chinese companies, and then the loan applications, and they were all very similar except for the branding, all these different applications. So we suspect they were being operated by a Chinese-based entity, but we are not really sure about that. So when you click on that Google Play Store link, you'll see this page, and opporupee.apk. When you download it and you install it, you will see these screens. So for the purpose of credit risk assessment, to facilitate faster loan disbursal, we require the following permission. So they are asking for the camera permission. We don't know what exactly they were doing, but maybe they would take pictures, and they would try to blackmail or something. But then on the next page, once you agree and grant that permission, you'll see that it is going to ask you for your mobile number. And in one of those cases, I think they were sending the OTPs onto your mobile, and then when you punch in the OTP, they will actually move you to the next screen, and it will offer you a loan of certain amount. But to get that loan in, you need to pay a certain amount of fee. So they will say that pay 500 rupees for the file charges, and then you'll get a loan of 1 lakh rupees. But obviously that was not the case. So these are the list of permissions which this particular application was taking, which has contacts, the phone logs, your storage permission, your write settings permission, which we discussed is a sensitive permission, and call permission, your camera permission, and Bluetooth permission, your location permissions. So it had extensive permissions, and obviously they would be snooping a lot of data from the user. So that is the end of the presentation, and I've also mentioned our email ID, CERT's email ID. So if you come across any such fraudulent applications, or if you come across any other fraudulent activity, you can always send us an email, and we will look at it. So now I am opening it up for questions. I'm just going to look in the chat box and see if there are questions. So someone has said that it is an excellent lecture. Thank you for that. I'm glad that you all are enjoying it, and I hope that you can gain something out of it. Um, Whether they kind of SMS sender cannot be identified. So definitely, sir, all these SMS senders can actually be traced back to the bulk SMS provider, and from that they can be traced. And so I'm not sure, but I think one of the gangs which was operating the income tax fraud were actually captured, and we received a report that they were actually arrested. So since training is attended from the office and we have to do the official work with the training, my humble suggestion is that kindly keep half day training around 3. Okay, so this is, I think, for Naresh ji.
No, actually, so
Yeah. So do you mean we should?
dear participants, I think currently raised to from U Ministry to Mighty. Currently, otherwise, as for the we are proceeding, sir. I request you to kindly raise this point because all the participants are raising it.
So someone has asked, do you mean we should read the privacy policy of all apps before saying yes? It is very cumbersome. Yes, definitely reading the privacy policy is very cumbersome because it is a lot of text, and in most cases you will not be able to make much sense out of it because it is designed in such a way to confuse the user. And that is actually not practical for all the applications and all the services that you use. But the best thing is not to provide your personal data to any of the applications unless it is absolutely necessary. So any of these applications that you're using for food delivery, for booking tickets, and for other stuff, for basically you're booking cabs or something, basically give the most bare minimum set of permissions that are required by the application, and don't give any other permission. Example, the SMS permission, like that. If you're giving that SMS permission once, if it is like absolutely required by the application to make sure. For example, in case of Beam and Google Pay and all these applications, I think they want to take your phone permission because they want to make sure that you are using the same SIM card on your device which you have declared on for basically login onto their into your account. So in that case, I think your phone permission will be required absolutely. Otherwise, those applications will not work. But otherwise, your phone for permission should not be going to any other application, and your contacts should not be going to any application. Someone is asking for the PPT. We have already, I've already provided that presentation to Naresh ji, and I think he'll be sharing it with you guys. So I've shared the PDF for my presentation, and Naresh ji already has it. You can take it. So someone is saying, okay, so if a lot of Android apps we deny permission, if we deny permission, then it does not work properly. Is there any way around this? So there is no way around this, sir. If you want to use that application, you need to give the permission. But if you feel that that application is not absolutely necessary for you, then just don't use that application. You can use the website in that case. So there are most of the applications that you use on your device, your Amazons, your Flipkarts, your Zomato and everything. All these applications have corresponding websites as well. So you can just open your laptop, you can just log into your account and you can use that, because on your laptop, it's not going to ask you for permission to access your contacts or your call logs or anything, because those things are not stored on your laptop. So it's always advisable, if you don't want to give the permissions, then don't use the app. Instead, go to the website.